Hi everybody, hope you are doing good, and in this particular video we're going to have a little bit of fun and we are going to build from scratch, totally from scratch, an MVP of a community type application. So this is the typical sort of site that you kind of would sign into. You would then kind of create posts, so you would put comments on there and you would maybe reply to other people's comments as well. There's different kind of sort of areas that you can kind of have a conversation in. So it's a little bit of fun, and we're going to focus primarily on building an MVP. We want to kind of make sure all of the key functionality is working. We're not going to worry so much about the design side or the aesthetics. We can come back and do that at a later time. And this is the key thing here, is that you don't want to kind of bog yourself down with worrying about the design. You want to just get the core functionality running first, and that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to use Windsurf. It's really affordable tool to use. It gives you access to all of the kind of the large language models. We're going to use Claude Sonnet here. We're going to start with an empty directory. We're going to use a Supabase. We're going to use React. We're going to set ourselves up with Next.js as well. I mean, all of that kind of stuff, if you're new to this space, you don't need to concern yourself with. We'll kind of go through it a little bit step by step here. So I'm going to come at it as you know, as almost a complete beginner. And to be honest with you, I'm a self-confessed, I'm not a massive React developer. I have experience in other particular languages. So I'm going to purely rely on here, literally Vibecoding this thing up, and hopefully we won't have any problems along the way. And if we do, then I'm going to fall back to the agent to kind of resolve all of those particular problems. And anything that I do think you need to understand, I'll point out along the way as well. So I'm going to put the L plates on my back. I'm going to act as a complete learner, and we're going to run through this together. And of course, there is some important bits along the way in terms of setting up kind of integration with like MCP and all that kind of stuff. But we'll get the core stuff set up and then we'll take it from there. So firstly, the first step is to go into ChatGPT, and I'm going to kind of just literally describe what I'm looking for. And I'm going to rely on ChatGPT to break it down into phases. And those phases are going to be super important to us, because in the cascade chat on the right hand side is we are going to execute those phases for implementation, and hopefully we should just watch it all happen magically in front of us. So let's get over to ChatGPT now. So here we are then in ChatGPT. I'm just going to use the voice mode here. I'm just going to talk to ChatGPT and give it everything that I need, and then we'll then ask ChatGPT to break it down into phases for us. So here we go then. Hey ChatGPT, right now what I want you to do is come up with a plan for me. So I would like to build a community application, like a community website that allows members to get engaged in threaded discussions on a variety of different topics. Now, this must strictly be an MVP. That's really important. I want to make sure that we focus on the key functionality first. I'm not too worried about the design side at this particular stage. So that is really important. So let's talk about the features then that this application needs. So this is going to require authentication. So we want users to be able to sign up, and we also want them to sign in. And I think it's important that our users have roles. So for example, we need a user role, we need a moderator, and we need an administrator. So when a user signs up, they will be then just given the user role. Now, inside the community forum itself, we're going to have this concept of spaces. Now, these spaces can be of a variety of different topics, and members of the community can go into those spaces and they can then have a threaded discussion. They can post their own threads into those particular spaces, and other members can comment on those spaces as well. So for example, we also want the members to be able to kind of delete any comments they put in. We also want the moderator to also have the ability to delete those particular comments, and we also want the administrator to be able to do that as well. So let's talk about the tech stack that's needed then. So we are going to be using Supabase as the back end, and we're also going to want to use React as the front end framework. And I think it's also important that we use something like Tailwind CSS and shadcn as the component library, because we want the website to use a well-established component library that allows it to be extensible in the future. So I think that is the key thing. Oh, also Next.js as well. We will be using Next.js in this particular implementation. So that is the requirements. Is there anything else that I have missed?
That's a great outline, Steve. I think you've covered all the core essentials for a community MVP. Just to recap, in a nutshell, we're looking at a Next.js front end with Tailwind and shadcn for styling and components.
I'll tell you what, we won't bother about the review. I think I'm quite happy with what you're going to say. The next stage for me, though, is I would like to break this down into phases, because the idea is that I'm going to be using an IDE that has an agent, and I'm going to prompt the agent to implement this solution in a variety of different phases. So let's start with phase one. Let's get some of the basic features and the project set up first. That's going to be really important. And then the rest of the phases can then focus on the implementation. Please, can you do that for me?
Absolutely. Let's break it down into phases so you can feed it to your IDE agent bit by bit. So for phase one, we're going to focus just on getting the foundational pieces in place. That means setting up your Next.js project, integrating Supabase.
So I'm just going to kill that there because I'm quite happy with all of that. I'm just going to now ask it now to please proceed. Please proceed with the phases like that. So off it goes, and hopefully that should structure it quite nicely for us. I think I've been pretty descriptive there in kind of what I'm looking for. So let's just leave that to play out in the background. But what I'm going to do now, while that's doing that, let's move back over to Windsurf, because there's something I'm going to get to do here as well, because we're going to be building a kind of a Next.js application here, which has got React and it's kind of got all of the kind of the key, or at least we want it to kind of build everything in a particular way that's going to be well structured for this particular project. We need it to be kind of scalable for us and maintainable. So my experience with using these agents is if we don't give something like Windsurf some kind of some direction in terms of how we want the project structured, then it will make a right old dog's breakfast of what it produces, certainly at this moment anyway. So what I'm going to do is in the chat window here is that I'm going to kind of just sort of activate the kind of the microphone here, and I'm going to describe what I'm looking for in terms of creating me a markdown file that will have a particular style that we would like when we start prompting, when we start building this application, we want it to actually follow itself. So here we go. Please can you create me a standards for building a Next.js application that also is using React as the front end framework. It's using shadcn as a component library, and ultimately I will use a Supabase as well. So what I would like you to do is I'd like you to create me a markdown file here that Cascade can reference on a regular basis to make sure that the project is continually conforming to a solid, maintainable and scalable structure. So there we go, just hit stop there. Let's just let that compute and do what it's got to do. I'm just going to enter there. Hopefully I give it enough kind of detail there to what I want it to do. So off it goes. It's going to have a little think about it. It's taking into account some of the frameworks and everything that I need. So away it's going. Now what it's going to do is, because I'm in kind of the chat mode just down here, it's kind of not going to kind of create that file for me, but it's going to kind of come up with it, and of course I can then there we go, it's entered to create the file. Obviously it can't do that because I'm in that particular mode. So in fact let me just turn this into code. Please create the file in the root. There we go. Yeah, to be fair, actually, sometimes it normally comes up and actually kind of shows me in the Cascade window here. But this time it's not done that. As always, when you're kind of doing something live, it's not going to work. But away it goes. It's going to create this Next.js standards for me. It should put that in the root of that community folder. So I'm just going to leave that to play out. And then what we're then going to need to do is we need to configure Windsurf to kind of make sure that it's referencing that particular document on a continuous basis as we are kind of putting these prompts in. So I'm just going to let that play out and we'll come back very shortly. Okay, so here we go then. We've got the Next.js standards file. This is a good start for our particular project here, certainly during the early phases of our development. It's not going to be so widely used further down, but for now, for us to get up and running, it's perfect. So what I'm going to do is, in this particular tutorial, again, there's many different ways of doing this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of take all of this here, actually. I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to go over to this option here. You see this little kind of notepad here where it says rules and memories. I'm just going to select that. And I'm going to go to a project rule here. It's come up with here a name, so I'm just going to call this rules like that. Then inside here, I'm going to choose the activation mode to be always on like that, and I'm just going to paste everything in here like that. So everything is in that file itself. So what this basically means is that every time that I'm kind of prompting, it's taking into account the contents of this particular file. Now, it's useful to start off with this. You don't need this to be in there forever. You could then keep the Next.js standards, which I will do, and you can then maybe reference this when you actually need to. But just for the early phases of this particular project, there's no harm in having this in there as a rule. So this is going to kind of sit in this folder called .windsurf and forward rules. We won't need to go in there again. That's good enough for us at this stage. So I'm just going to kind of minimize that, but we'll just keep this file there just purely for reference for a later point. But of course you can delete that. So that is all looking good. I think we're in a good place there. Now let's pop back over to ChatGPT and see what it's produced. So here we go. Here's the phases that it's kind of created for us, which is looking good. We've got phase one. So the phase one is very much about kind of doing the initial kind of project and tooling setup. Then we're looking at the Supabase schema and auth configuration. So you can see we've created some tables here. And then we are also then got phase three, which is the auth flows and basic layout. And then phase four, spaces, list and detail pages. And then we've got a phase five as well, and probably phase six. And is there any more than that? So we've got 7 phases: role management and hardening and deployment. So I think that's good. I think that's good for this particular series to get ourselves up and running. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to take phase one. Now, what I would typically do here is I would create like another MD file inside the Windsurf project and call it something like phase1.md. The problem that I find with ChatGPT is it doesn't do a very good job at creating a full MD file, which is kind of the format I like to work in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this first particular phase, and there's a website that I just googled and I looked for a text to an MD converter here. So if I just delete this out of here, paste that in, you can see here now I've got this MD file that's kind of being created for me. So I'm just going to copy that, and I'm just going to move back over to here. Let's now create our first file. So this is going to be phase-1.md like that. Let's just paste all of that in there and we are good to go. So I think what we can now do is, in fact, one thing I'm going to do, and this is just I think quite important, is that I would like to go back to ChatGPT here, and I would like to please create an overall summary of the project. So just let that play out. I'm going to copy this and put this at the top of the actual MD file, the very first MD file, just to give it a little bit of context to start off with in terms of what this project actually is. So hopefully that won't take too long. For some reason ChatGPT is taking a little bit longer than it normally does. We'll just let that, okay, here it comes now. So that's good. I'm just going to copy all of that. Okay, let's go back into here. Let's just paste that in there like that. Let's just copy that here, go back over here, and just at the very top of this project, of this first phase, I'm just going to put that in there like that. So at least we've got an overview there of the project. Just make sure I save that. Make sure I save the rules. I forgot to do that. Let me just close that down. Let's close that down, and I'm left with that. Okay, so I think we are in a good place. Now, the prerequisites for this particular sort of tutorial is that you need to make sure that you've got Node.js installed. That's going to be super important because we're going to be using Node packages here in this particular project. And we're also going to be using Supabase, but we'll go and create that project very soon. But let's focus now on creating the essentials of this particular project. Let's get the key kind of sort of project structure in place based on this phase one. So let's now move over here now to the agent. Now, the key thing to point out here is we want to create all of the project files in this particular folder. We want it to be in the root of our community folder. We don't want it to create any kind of crazy folder structure that means we're going to need to move into those particular directories. So one thing that's really important is here is that I'm going to say here, please implement phase 1 in the current folder. Now, if I don't say current folder, then what might happen is that we'll start creating, as I said, all of these crazy folders. So I'm going to press enter here, and that is, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully all that I need to do. So it's got enough context, I think, in here in terms of what it needs to do. You can see that here is creating that kind of that step number 1, where we're creating the Next.js app. And I'm just going to leave that to kind of play out now. Now, I shouldn't have to go in here and kind of prompt this on further. But if I do, and if there's anything important I need to point out when that happens, I'll come back in. But other than that, I'm going to leave this to play out, and then we'll see what it's come up with as soon as it's done.